In this final presentation, I'd like to take you through how PAT might operate and some of the benefits we get from applying PAT in accounting research, as well as a tour of some of the quite strong criticisms made of it. So PAT offers accounting academics and practitioners insights and tools for understanding what really happens in accounting practice as opposed to what should be happening. So that's really the big point of difference between positive accounting theory and normative accounting theory. It's important to remember that neither PAT nor agency theory make any judgment about morality, about greed, about ethics, or anything like that. It's simply interested in predicting and explaining what happens out there in accounting. So you can make your own mind up, your own judgment about the usefulness of a theory like PAT. So, two beneficial things that PAT can provide. It provides an efficiency perspective. In other words, it can guide practitioners, it can guide shareholders, directors on a board about the sorts of controls and incentives that they can put in place to focus their managers on the outcomes that they want for the company. And secondly, there's an opportunistic perspective that can alert a board of directors, for example, to some of the opportunistic and unplanned for actions that their agents might be getting up to. To recap, PAT uses our hypotheses to test what the agents are doing in a business. And it provides three major hypotheses that can be tested. One is the bonus hypothesis. Under this, managers on accounting-based bonus schemes will select accounting methods that lead to an increase in profits. The second hypothesis is the political cost hypothesis, and that is managers in firms facing political scrutiny will adopt accounting methods that reduce reported income. So that's following on from the little example I gave at the end of the last presentation. What would you do if you were about to release the results for a big Australian bank? Finally, there's the debt hypothesis, and that is managers in firms about to breach debt covenants will select accounting methods that will lead to an increase in reported profits and assets. Now, what PAT has done is shone a real critical light on the opportunistic possibilities for accountants and managers. It allows practitioners, it allows boards of directors to be very careful and to be critical of the bonus schemes that are about to be offered to their managers, and alerts them to the fact that some managers can be creative in their accounting to the detriment of the firm. What's happened as a result is that many firms adopt as policy to use very conservative accounting practices. For example, they remain they stick with things such as historical cost accounting for valuing their assets. Why? Because it provides fewer opportunities for opportunistic managers to manipulate asset valuations for their own self-interest. And we've found out through the use of PAT in research that providers of capital, such as banks, investors, prefer to see more conservative accounting practices because it lowers the risk of opportunistic behaviour. And if you can lower the risks, then you can lower the cost of acquiring capital. Now, while PAT has had some benefits, there are really important criticisms of it that you might want to be aware of. As more research has been conducted using PAT, a criticism has been made that, these research papers are really more of the same, and we're not really learning anything new as a result. Pat is not as value-free as it would like you to believe, as some scholars have pointed out. Just by selecting Pat as the lens through which to view accounting practice is making a value judgment. So that's something to keep in mind too. Finally, Pat offers no way to improve accounting practice, and it doesn't purport to do that. So Pat is about looking at what is, not what you think should be. And finally, and this is the criticism that I feel attuned to, the assumption that all professional managers and their accountants are self-centred, self-serving, self-interested opportunists is a rather depressing view of the world. And clearly that doesn't happen in all cases. So if it doesn't happen in all cases, you have to ask yourself, is this a valid assumption for Pat to make? So in conclusion, I'd like to say that Pat has, to some extent, revolutionised accounting research, but it's not free from its critics. Critics ponder whether continuous research using Pat really tells us anything new. Yes, we know that managers can be opportunistic. Yes, we know that results can be manipulated to obtain a certain result that coincides with the manager's self-interest. Beyond that, do we know anything new? Is this really important anymore? However, I should like to say that as a counter to a field of research that up to this point had been strongly normative, Pat has been a refreshing change, and it's given rise to a whole range of other research approaches, and some of those we're going to meet later in this unit. And so for that alone, Pat is something that is worth knowing. Certainly do more detailed reading through your textbook and your research notes. So in conclusion, I hope you've enjoyed that, and do some more reading about Pat, and I hope you find the topic interesting. Bye for now.